Welcome, everyone, to our live podcast episode. I'm so excited that we get to talk to Landen in a moment. First, I wanted to give a shout out of thank you to the team over at Offering Tree for making the live podcast possible. It's so fun because then you can attend live or catch the replay and ask questions as we go. Today's is going to be super special because Landen has a slideshow organized for us to show us all the things about having closed captioning while we're teaching our yoga classes. Before I dive into that, I also want to say that if you're watching this live or watching the replay before April the 7th, then I have a yoga for pelvic girdle pain training happening tomorrow. I also want to tell you that there is a coupon code. I almost forgot to say this for Offering Tree. If you are looking at Offering Tree, I know a lot of you have been sharing questions in the Connected Yoga Teacher group. Go to offeringtree.com/Shannon, and that will get you a coupon code to that. And I also wanted to tell you about an event that Tristan Katz is doing. Let me pull it up here. I'll make sure to put the link in the comments for you later. Tristan Katz is teaching Deconstructing Wellness. It's finding flow, exploring gender, embodying inclusivity. So really talking about how to make our yoga classes inclusive for all genders. Tuesday, April 13th, 4 to 6 p.m. I'm guessing that's Eastern, but that's because that's where I live. That's what I'm guessing. Actually, I think it isn't Eastern because I think I added it to my calendar and I think it's later. But that is April the 13th. Okay, so let's dive in. Landen, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell me, first of all, how do you pronounce your name and what are your pronouns?
So you pronounce my name Landen Stacy, and my pronouns are he, him.
Okay, perfect. And tell us a bit about your yoga journey. Like, where do you live? Where do you teach? And how did you find yoga and then decide to do closed captioning?
So I live in Pembroke, Massachusetts. My studio is in Pembroke, Massachusetts. And I started yoga when I was in high school. They offered yoga as an alternative to gym class. So I decided to dive into that instead of running the mile. So I took yoga in high school, and then I really enjoyed my time doing it. So after I graduated high school, I kind of continued on with my yoga journey here and there. And then I ended up doing more yoga. I took my teacher training at the studio that I currently own. And I took over the studio 2 years next month. So the studio's been open for about 11 years now. And yeah, I love teaching. I love the ability to create accessible classes in my studio. I like that I have this platform to be able to help people with. And I think I'm trying to create the studio that I always wish that I had. A lot of the times when I used to go to yoga studios, I wouldn't feel welcome, or I wouldn't feel that they were accessible, and I would really struggle with that feeling of I don't belong here. So when I took over Emerald Yoga Studio, I really was trying to create a place that everybody felt included and everybody felt safe in. And that's kind of what led me down the path of closed captioning, because I think that it's such an important thing that we can add to our classes and to our broadcasts and things like that. And it's such a small thing that you can do that really helps a lot of people. And not just people who are hard of hearing, but also people who might have trouble with just general processing of what you're saying, or if they didn't catch what you said, at least usually the closed captioning lags behind you just a little bit so they can look over and see, oh, you said down dog, and follow along that way.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, I use closed captioning when I watch some Netflix shows, especially British shows, because or Scottish accents. Even though it's English, I can't always catch everything. And we're all different learners as well. So, I also want to share your website address, emeraldyoga.com. So are you teaching in person now or all online, or how is that working in Massachusetts?
So both. So we have in-person classes, and we're limited right now to we have 7 spots where before we had about 24. So we're limited in capacity, and then we're doing a fully virtual schedule as well. So all of our classes are also online.
Oh, this is exciting. So anyone who's watching this live or the replay, you can join a class and check it out. Okay, this is really fun. Also, for those of you who are here live, say a hello in the comments. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and tell us how things are going where you are teaching. Are you teaching online or in person? Have you done closed captioning? We love your comments as well as your questions, so feel free to do that. So let's dig in, I guess. Well, actually, before we even get there, do you want to tell me, like, so we went over this makes it more accessible. Do you have students that tell you, like, I come to your classes because you have the closed captioning?
I do, and I also I sort of started the closed captioning because I knew people in my life who used closed captioning on TV and used it on their phone or on a computer and things like that. And it gave me the idea that this is just one thing that we can do that's going to help broaden our audience of people who are going to follow along with my studio. And it's going to help people who maybe couldn't find a yoga studio that would go the extra mile for them to actually put closed captioning on the classes. So I really think that this has helped a lot of people, whether they knew it or not, that they wanted closed captioning, because some people will turn it on or will turn it on at the beginning of class and then they'll ask me to turn it off. And I also included that in my presentation on how you can tell your students if they don't want closed captioning for whatever other reason, because some people do, especially if you have some sort of like an executive functioning disorder, it can actually be really distracting to have the closed captionings. So there is sort of like half and half. It's good for some people and it's not good for other people, but I like to give people just the option to be included in closed captioning. And as weird as it is, I'm so grateful that we've gone virtual to be able to offer this to people, because live classes, obviously you can't offer closed captioning in front of you.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's so true. Okay. So this is important that we can turn it on and off.
Right.
And I'm so glad that you're going to show us. I know nothing about this. So what do we need, first of all, to be able to do the closed captioning that you're going to show us? And if at any point I'm asking a question, you want to start the presentation, you just let me know.
I'm going to go ahead and get started because I actually have a slide in there about the prerequisites that you have to have on Zoom to be able to offer it.
Okay, perfect. There we go.
Okay. So I'm going to be going over how to add closed captioning to Zoom for your yoga classes. So first, I wanted to dive into the benefits of actually adding these closed captioning to your yoga classes. So like I said before, it's not only good for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it's also good for people for better comprehension. It's good for people who are viewing in sound sensitive environments. For example, if you have a bunch of kids at home that are running around and you can't understand what's happening on the screen, or you can't get your volume loud enough, it's good for that too. And then it's also really good for easily translating into foreign languages. Zoom doesn't do this on its own. So if you are trying to translate it into another language, you have to use a third-party app to do that. But at least you have the option there to grab all of the text and throw it into some sort of a translator. And then if you're somebody who's taking all of your videos like we are and adding them to an on-demand sort of venue or gallery, this is good for video searching and search engine optimization, because you'll be able to have the different words and keywords that a search engine will pick up on in your videos.
Oh my gosh, I love this list, especially like kids running around at home or translating it to a different language. I didn't even think of these things.
Yeah, so it's not just for people. I mean, it is for people who are hard of hearing, but it's also for a bunch of other reasons. And like you said about watching TV with your closed captioning on, because I do that too. It's good for a whole plethora of people who are looking for that extra layer of being able to understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So the requirements to enable closed captioning and live transcription. So when I go over what we're going to go over today, I'm going to talk about closed captioning, which is just the subtitles that pop up below your videos. And then there's also this added feature that Zoom has, which is live transcription. So I'll go into both of those. So just a big overview. So on a Zoom desktop, Windows or Mac, this is the version that you need to have. And then on your mobile app, whether you're on Android or iOS, this is the version that you need to have. So that's not so important. But for the live transcription, so for your account type, you need to have a paid account. So currently, this isn't accessible to people who are on just the free, unpaid Zoom plan. You have to have either Pro, Business, Education, or Enterprise. However, they are rolling out the live transcription to all of the accounts, including free, and they should have this done by fall 2021. Until then, though, you can go in, there's an access button that you can request access to live transcription if you do have a free account until then. But also, I wanted to note that approved K through 12 accounts and other accounts will be able to request this access up until then. And then for your Zoom desktop client for Windows, Mac, this is the version that you want to have, the 5.0.2, and you can see this all in your settings, and then the Zoom mobile app. So if you go in to try to enable things and you don't see the options, you might just need to do an update, and then everything should be in there. Okay, so now I'm going to go over how to actually enable the closed captioning. So the first thing that you need to do is you actually need to log in into Zoom on a web browser. You can't access this on your phone or a tablet. You have to start off on a computer just to access this setting. And once you turn it on, you don't have to turn it off. But this is just the first initial how to get this set up. So you'll log into your Zoom account on any web browser. You'll click My Account up in the top right, or you'll have a little photo of your profile up there. And then over on the left-hand side on the Zoom website, you'll see this drop-down. So you have your profile, meetings, webinars, all of your recordings, and then settings. So you want to navigate over here onto settings. And then once you get into your settings, it's going to give you different settings for all different things in your Zoom account. So recordings, telephone, collaboration devices, and then also meetings. So under the meetings tab is where this closed captioning piece lives. Once you get into the meeting tab, you'll scroll down. This is about halfway down on my computer. It might be somewhere else on yours, but you're looking for this subheader up here where it says In Meeting Advanced. Once you find that, you'll see the option for closed captioning. So once you find the option for closed captioning, you'll want to click this little button here to toggle it on. When it's blue, it means it's on. And then you also want to enable this live transcription service to show transcript on the side panel in your meeting. So those are the two settings that you want to turn on, and then you might need to save, or you might auto save on Zoom depending on which browser you're using on your computer. So once you've enabled your closed captioning and enabled your live transcription, you're ready to join your meeting on Zoom as the host. So you can't enable your closed captioning as a participant. The host of the meeting has to be the one that has this available on their actual meeting themselves. And then your participants can go in and turn them on or off, but you as the host have to be the one that initiates the closed captioning. So I know some of us join on Zoom to record our yoga classes on the computer, and then others join on our phones, or I personally use like a tablet in my studio to record. So I broke this up into sections because there's two different ways that you're going to want to access the closed captioning in Zoom. So on a computer, so once you join your meeting, you'll go down to the three dots down here where it says More, and it'll open up this menu here. So you're looking for where it says Live Transcript. And once you click on this Live Transcript, you'll get this other menu that gives you a couple of options. So you can assign a participant to type. So if you want a co-host in your meeting or somebody else who's on your meeting to type in your closed captioning, you can do that. That's especially good if you're saying a lot of words or a lot of names that will be spelled incorrectly. It's good to have somebody type those out. Or if you're maybe switching between languages, that can also be a good reason to have somebody else type it out. You can also be the person who will be typing the closed captioning. You can use a third-party closed captioning service such as Otter or Verbit is another one that I'm familiar with. Or what we personally use in my studio is this live transcript option. So you can enable auto transcription, which means it's going to automatically pick up on what you're saying, and it's just going to create a closed captioning right across the bottom of your screen. So I've also listed some pros and cons to this option. So you'll want to click this enable auto transcription. The pros, so it's easy to use. You just turn it on and it immediately starts going. It's mostly accurate. It's not 100%. This will be available to all plans, including the free plan, by fall 2021. And after you create a live transcript, you can actually save this transcript after as almost like when you save your chat box in your Zoom meeting, you can save your transcript to be able to reference later, or to be able to, if you're recording a podcast, for example, now you have everything transcribed and you can take all of that information and copy it into another file. The cons of using this live auto transcription are it's only supported in English currently. It's not 100% accurate, so sometimes I'll say things and then I'll read it over after, and I notice that it's not 100% following along with exactly what I'm saying. Currently, it's not available for breakout rooms. So if you're doing something other than a yoga class where you're using breakout rooms, you can't currently use this live transcription. You can use closed captioning, but only in one breakout room. You can't use it in all. And it's not so great if you do have background noise. So if you have a lot of stuff going on in the background, or if you're teaching outside and you start to pick up a lot of other noises, or if you have a lot of verbal feedback in your yoga classes, maybe you have a class that you're teaching where a lot of people chime in and they say a lot of things during class, it might not be the greatest because it's also going to pick up on what everybody else is saying. The other good thing that's great about the auto transcription is that it's going to create this transcription on the side that you can view. And if you have people where you're viewing online, so if I'm talking and then another one of my teachers is talking and a student is talking, it's going to break up those people so you can see who said what in sort of like a chat format, but just all live transcribed.
This is amazing. I'm thinking of, like, this is something that I could add to any of my calls, like my Q&A calls, like you said, podcast interviews, where we grab the video to have that transcription. I have another tool that I use for transcription, but this is great. Like, it's available to anyone who pays for Zoom. This is amazing.
Yeah, and then even if you don't currently pay for Zoom, you can also request the feature in the meantime until they get it all rolled out to everybody. So I think that makes it even more accessible, because I know not everybody has like a paid plan on Zoom.
Right.
So the next part is, once you do enable that live auto transcript, you'll also get this additional menu. So when you go back into the three dots, the more, you'll get these options. So show subtitles, view your full transcript, and then subtitle settings. So I wanted to show what each of these did, just so you knew what the settings were and so that you knew what you could adjust inside of Zoom. So you can show and hide subtitles from this option as well. So once you enable your live transcripts, so right here, this is actually me speaking into Zoom. Once you enable live transcripts, you'll be able to see them here. So this is what it's going to look like on the bottom of your screen as the default. So once you show them, they'll be here, or you can hide them and then they'll be gone for you, but other people can go in on their device and activate them as well. To view the full transcript, so over here on the side, you'll see this transcript. It's going to be time-stamped here. And then once you enable your transcripts, you'll be able to read it here. So it's going to populate almost as like a chat box where you'll see all of the things that you're saying, and it'll just kind of move along similar to your chat feature. And then you see this button down here. So save transcript. That's what's going to allow you to save this entire transcript after your meeting or in the middle of your meeting to be able to go back and reference. You can
One
also,
question about that,
yeah,
Landon. Do you have to do it while you're still live, or can you grab it later if you've forgotten?
I believe you can grab it later if you've forgotten. If you are recording it, it will save a copy of your transcript. Just like if you're doing like a cloud recording where it saves your video, your audio, it saves your chat box, and then it'll also save this transcript file in there for you to reference as well.
Okay, great.
And then there's also subtitle settings. So this is basically just adjusting your font size if you want it to be bigger, if you want it to be smaller, and you can change some other features in there as well. But I just wanted to show what those subtitle settings were and what you could change in there. So now let's go over how to add closed captioning and live transcription from a mobile device or a tablet. So personally, for my studio, we use our iPad to record all of our classes. So I wanted to go over, because I know a lot of people are also using their phones to be able to record their classes. I wanted to go over how to actually launch this on a phone or a tablet. So you'll join a regular Zoom meeting just as you usually do. You want to go down to the three dots down here, or if you have a different kind of device, like this is on my phone, but I know on my iPad, it's actually up in the top right-hand corner. So wherever your more settings are, that's where you're going to head. And you'll click on this more menu. And then you're going to look for this option where it says enable live transcript. And you can go ahead and click on that, and that'll enable your closed captioning and live transcription. So this is what the live transcripts are going to look like on a mobile device. They'll be down here. And once you enable your live transcript, you'll be able to see any words that you start to say pop up along the bottom of the screen as you're closed captioning. And then one more thing I wanted to mention as well with the closed captioning and the live transcript is that your students have the option to actually view these as a participant as well. So just like you can see it, your students are going to be able to see it, but they also have options to be able to interact with your closed captioning. So on a computer, if your students are joining on a computer, they'll have the option to click this button here. So it looks like a square with the two C's in it, closed captioning. And they can edit their settings as well. So they can show or hide the subtitles. So like I said before, some students don't want to have closed captioning on. So they can click this button, show subtitle or hide, and they can get rid of them. They can also view this full transcript, which is going to pull up that whole chat box on the side to follow along with the transcript as it's moving with the timestamps. And then they can edit their own subtitle settings to be able to adjust the sizes. As long as you have them turned on your side, they can go in and turn them off. So I like to turn them on and then guide students to turn them off on their own. I like to have the option so that if people want them, they can have them. If they don't want them, they can turn them off.
This is so handy. Lynn is saying very helpful. I agree. And Lisa is saying this is so great. Thank you. This is amazing.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad this is helping, because I think a lot of people don't know about this feature on Zoom. So I'm hoping that a lot of people start to add it to their own classes.
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking of immense possibilities, even when I'm attending, like, let's say I have like a group coaching thing that I attend as an attendee. And sometimes someone says something and I'm like, what was that thing that they listed or said? And it would be there
Yeah,
ready for you. Oh, wow.
exactly. And I just think sometimes it's easier to follow along, especially if you're listening in on, I don't know, like the example I'm going to give is like a lecture where you're kind of listening to a lot of information. Sometimes it's nice to be able to scroll back up and just see, oh, did I hear that correctly? Or if you're taking notes, it's good to be able to have the visual there of all of the notes that you can kind of jot down and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So this is how they can interact on a computer, but also I know some students will view yoga classes on their phone or a tablet. So I wanted to include that as well. So before they join your meeting, they need to go into this little gear icon. So you see the start a meeting, and then underneath that, that's where they would click join a meeting and add in your code. So if they click on this gear icon, it's going to bring them to a a settings menu where they'll go to their meeting settings, and then they can toggle on or off their closed captioning. So if every time they join, they don't want to see your closed captioning, they can turn it right off. And vice versa, if every time they join, they do want to see your closed captioning, they can turn it back on.
This is good. Do you walk people through this when they're new, or do you have an email that goes out, or how do you let them know this?
I do kind of mention it in the welcome email that we send out to all of the students that are joining virtually, just to let them know that we have this option. We include it in our broadcast or our classes, and if you don't want to see them, you can turn them off. But if you do want to see them, this is how you turn them on.
Okay.
Oh, and then also on a mobile device or a tablet, your students can also view a full transcript, just like they could see the on the computer on the side. The only kind of problem here is that if they're viewing the full transcript, they can no longer see you. So they can just see that screen, just like if you were to open up your chat box on a mobile device or on a tablet, it's going to take up your whole screen. So if you're doing something where they don't need to visually see you or follow along, and they can just follow along with the full transcript, they can do that. Otherwise, that's there for them to reference later.
Okay, that's good to know that they won't be able to see you.
Yes, so they can see the closed captioning. They just won't be able to follow along with that whole transcript of everything that's happening in kind of live time or what's happening in the past.
Someone who's here says thank you. I'm sorry, I don't have your name up here. And Liz is saying, this is fantastic. I've been trying to figure this out, and with this simple tutorial, just tried it. It works. Thanks, Landen and Shannon. I'm excited to teach my first closed caption class this afternoon. Oh my gosh,
good.
Liz. That's like a instant win right
Yeah,
there.
it's super easy. Because you just have to enable it that one time in your actual account, and then every time you start a Zoom meeting, you do have to go in and just enable your live transcription to start when you want it to start, because initially you might not want it to start right at the class time, especially if I like to kind of meander a little bit in the beginning of my classes, so I don't want the transcriptions to grab all of that information, but I'll usually start it when I go to hit record for the entire class. I'll hit my live transcriptions and start it then.
Okay, that's good to know.
So I also wanted to go over recording with closed captioning, because I know some of us do the recording and we save our videos to the on-demand. This is a part of Zoom that I'm not 100% familiar with, because I'll get into this because it's only available on certain plans. So audio transcription automatically transcribes the audio of your meeting or webinar that you record to the cloud. So if you do have the Zoom webinar add-on, you can also use the transcription feature. After this transcript is processed, it appears as a separate VTT file, which is your transcription file. And it's in your list of recorded meetings in the cloud. So like I said before, it's in there with your video, your audio, and if you have your chat on or anybody writes in your chat, it'll save that. And then it'll also save this separate file. In addition, you have the option to display the transcript text within the video itself. So if you want your video to still have the closed captioning, once you move it onto your on-demand, you do have that option to add it. However, this feature is only available to the following plans. So business, education, enterprise, you have to have these licenses with the closed recording enabled. So I know that this makes it a little less accessible, because for the most part, I think a lot of yoga teachers and a lot of yoga studios are just paying for that lowest tier paid membership, the Pro. So unfortunately, if you do want to record with the closed captioning through Zoom, you do have to have a higher paid plan for that. I did include in here, though, if you do have one of those accounts, this is how you go ahead and enable the audio transcription for your recording. So you sign into your Zoom portal. In the navigation menu, you click on Account Management and then Account Settings. You go to your cloud recording option and then record and verify that the setting is enabled. And then you go into your advanced cloud recording settings, click the audio transcript text box, click Save. And then you can also make this mandatory if you have a lot of other teachers that are accessing your account, so that every time they do it, this is going to be enabled. I didn't want to go too deep into the recording with the closed captioning because I don't know how many people actually go on to pay for a higher tier of your Zoom plan. But I did include in this presentation a link to this page that includes how to actually walk you through with the recording. I'm just not super familiar with it because, like I said, we just pay for the pro plan. We don't use the recording with the closed captioning. I do believe there might be some third-party services that will do this transcribing for you on top of your videos. You can also get a third-party app that will transcribe, and then you can take all of those closed captionings and go into like a video editing service and line them up with your video if that's something that you want to do as well.
Right. Okay.
And that's how to add closed captioning and live transcribing. Thank you.
That's amazing. I am so excited about this. I really would love to see, I'm going to bring up your website again. I'd love to see our yoga teachers show up and try it out and see how it goes. And I feel like this is a no-brainer. It's
Oh
like we
yeah.
can make our yoga classes more accessible. And like you said, people can choose to have it on or off, whatever they want. And it's included.
Right. I think
I had no idea.
it's a great feature. I think that it's great, and especially where we're moving more into, I see a lot more videos on Facebook and on YouTube that are automatically, they automatically have the closed captioning, and that's good for people who are listening on mute and just following along. But I think this would be good for a whole bunch of different instances that we use Zoom for, not just yoga classes.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, however we do this on StreamYard, when it goes to Facebook, I know that the closed captioning is somehow there
Right.
magically. I don't do anything with that. And I definitely see this happening more and more for, like you said, all kinds of learners, but definitely to make it accessible for the deaf or hard of hearing. So this is amazing. Does anyone have questions who's here live? I'm curious to know if Liz is going to try it out, but I'm curious to know if anyone has other questions about it. And also, I have a question for you, Landon. Like, how how's it been owning a yoga studio this year?
It's been interesting. It's So when I took over the studio, it was May 2019. And my first year as the owner was from May 2019 to May 2020. So within my first year, I had like a pandemic to deal with. And now I'm going into my second year, and my second year has basically entirely been pandemic yoga. So it's definitely been interesting, but I feel like it's given me the time to kind of explore these other options and these other tools that we couldn't do before. I like to think that owning the studio, I've made it more accessible in the ways that I've been trying to. I try my best to make everybody feel welcome and comfortable here. But I feel like this has been able to allow me to just step it up a notch and find ways to make this even more accessible, and even to people who uh, maybe aren't comfortable taking an indoor yoga class, not because of the pandemic, just because of their own, anxiety or their own schedule or things like that. I think that just having this virtual option has really opened doors like so much. I'm so glad that it's sort of like this weird feeling of gratitude that we were able to move virtual, because of course I'm not happy about the pandemic, but I'm happy that it brought along all of these solutions that we found.
I totally agree. I can see that you have some merch behind you for the
Yes.
studio. That's really exciting. Are there some other ways that you're really passionate about making your classes and your studio more accessible?
Yeah, so I a lot of the times when people inquire about the studio, so whether it's a phone call or I have a like an inquiry box on our website. So when somebody inquires to the studio, I try to always remember to offer them like a first glance. So I think that it's really comforting to people to come into the studio if they're coming in person, to come into the studio when it's completely empty and there's nobody else in here and we're not having a class, just so that they can sort of walk around and see what is going on in here. Because I think that that's one of the scariest things is I don't know what's behind those closed doors. I don't know, what's behind the curtains. And I think of it a little bit like when I was a kid and I went to kindergarten, we had a meet and greet with your teacher, and you went there with no other kids there, and you just sat with your teacher and you learned their name and you found out where your cubby was, and you were able to see the space when it wasn't in use. And I like to offer that to students before they come here if they're interested in coming and checking it out, because I think that makes the space more accessible. Another thing that I did this year was Google Maps came in and did a virtual tour. So it's not published yet on our Google listing, but it will be, so that you can actually click through our studio and walk around essentially like in a virtual way to see all of the spots and to see where we keep all of our props and kind of get familiar with the space before you come in. And I think that that really helps to ease people into yoga, and it eases their anxiety about trying a new place. And then another thing that I do for accessibility is we have some benches in the studio that are available for if anybody wants to take like chair yoga, or if they want to integrate that into like a regular yoga class. And then we also have some other like folding chairs and stuff like that if they want to space them out.
Well, that's amazing. I love this whole idea of that tour, and it is scary to go into a new place, and especially
Yeah.
a yoga studio. A friend of mine was just telling me the other day, "Oh, I've moved to this new place and I'm trying out this studio and I don't know what to expect." It's that yeah, it's the anxiety of around like what's this going to be like? So, that's
and
great.
and I sort of I mean, this is just how I interact with businesses. I know before I go into a business, I usually look them up to see what the inside looks like, or if I'm going someplace that I have like an appointment at, I'll go and look at what the outside looks at to looks like, so that I can make sure that I actually am at the right place and that I have the directions. I know what the parking situation is like. I know if I'm parking on the street or if I'm in a parking lot. So I think adding those things to your yoga studio, or if you have your own like home business, I think having those photos so that people can get that insider look, I think it just helps to take away their anxiety. It allows them to see what's going on, what they can expect once they do arrive.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Um, Someone else from Facebook said, "Thank you for this. I just set mine up. So glad I can offer this for my students." Yay, that's 2 people so far. This
That's
is
great.
really exciting. Um, is there anything else that you'd wanna share with yoga teachers, about your own journey, about owning a yoga studio, about making classes accessible, anything else?
I like to this. I don't want this to sound, like I'm selfish, but I like to teach the way that I would want to be taught, and like I like to run my business the way that I would want to meet an owner of a business. So I like to be available by phone. Like my studio phone rings right to my cell phone. Everybody has that number. I like to be available to my students, and whether that's by email or social media, I like to interact with them. I like to remind people that just because we're yoga teachers or yoga business owners, we're still people. And as soon as we walk out those doors, everything doesn't go out the window, but we're not um, like guru level, so we still live our lives and there's still things that we do. And I think that it's important to remind our students that they're not trying to emulate this perfect person that's teaching them at the front of the room, where we're all kind of in this together. And I like to make my yoga relatable. So adding in this accessibility piece, I think makes yoga more relatable to everybody. And I think about the journey that I had um, through learning yoga and through trying a lot of studios, and being sort of like the minority of being a guy in a yoga class. And I remember how many studios I walked into and how uncomfortable I would feel. And I was very careful about where I would set up my mat, because I didn't want to maybe like offend somebody. I didn't want to be too close to them. I wanted to give everybody space. And then once I journeyed down the road of being a yoga instructor, I also was very cautious of how am I going to portray myself as a guy yoga teacher, and do I want to do hands-on adjustments? How do I ask for consent for hands-on adjustments and make that more accessible for people to say no to me and to say no to my instructors, and just including that in like our whole entire like livelihood of the studio. I want every piece of the studio to just feel like everybody's welcome here, and that we're giving everybody the chance to come enjoy yoga.
That's amazing. You said, oh, maybe this is because I'm selfish. I've created this business and these yoga classes, but it sounds like it's very intentional and from a place of compassion for what it feels like to walk into a space and to, want everyone to feel comfortable there. So I appreciate this so much. Thank you so much for putting all of the slides together. That was like above and beyond. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but this was perfect with the slides. The replay will be here for our listeners as well. And how can people take a class with you or let you know how great this was? How can they connect with you after today?
You can find my website. So my website is emeraldyoga.com. Yeah, right there at the bottom. And if you want to email me, I love feedback. My email is emeraldyogastudio@gmail.com, but you can also find my email on my website. So if you head there first, you'll find all my contact info on there too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Lisa said heartfelt. I totally agree. It's like a lot of heartfelt care. So thank you for caring for us today and like creating this whole visual experience. That was amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to everyone also who is here live.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.